Good evening and welcome to an all-new Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is where we take a look at national, state, and local news through a progressive perspective. On this week's show, we are going to take a closer look into the President's State of the Union address, how it affects us here in Acadiana, how it affects the nation, and also we're going to take a look into, an in-depth look into, the Democratic response that was issued by freshman senator and former Republican, by the way, Jim Webb. Jim, as you may recall, fought against incumbent Senator George Macaca Allen, and one of the most extreme right-wing senators that I'm proud to say we were able to replace. Webb has a distinguished bit of service for our country that we'll talk about a little bit later, serving as the former Secretary of the Navy underneath President Reagan. So it'll be definitely a jam-packed full night. And as always, this week, your progressive news and commentary. Senator Landrieu has announced to chair a subcommittee of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate. From a written statement, Senator Lieberman says about her, I am pleased to announce that one will be the Subcommittee on Disaster Recovery, chaired by Senator Landrieu, whose unyielding concern for the people of her state and region, coupled with her unrelenting work to keep the public focused on the challenges and the obstacles within the recovery area, deserves this distinction. I know she will use her new position to critically examine issues related to the government's work to help, in particular, help communities recover from disasters in general, and Hurricanes Katrina and Rita in particular, and I look forward to working with her. You know, it's high time that these issues are actually addressed, and maybe now that we have someone that has a vital stake in our recovery is going to be heading the committee. Couldn't have picked a better person. We're very, very proud of our Senator Landrieu. So perhaps now we'll actually get some real action where this is concerned. Senator Hagel blasts the Bush administration in the Senate against the Bush troop surge. Senator Chuck Hagel blasted the Bush administration this past week in the Senate hearing, outlining the issues the American people have with the Bush's latest plan on Iraq. Hagel, as you may know, is a Republican from Nebraska, and as of late, he has been very, very critical of the Bush administration and is really leading the way when it comes to Republicans. It seems that we have no shortage of Republican senators that actually want to sign on to this resolution that they are currently working on in the Senate. This past week, he outlined his views. Here they are. Take a look.
We are not about this resolution, those who I'm associated with. I don't think anybody in the Senate. If there is one senator in the United States Senate that is all about defeating America, making America's position more dangerous, or eroding our standing in the world, I don't know of that person. If you do, please let me know. Every one of the 100 senators, Republican, Democrat, Independent, that I know of, has said, how do we do this in a way that we look after, first, the national interest of America? That still is rather significant. I don't question the president's sincerity, his motivation to this. I never have, nor anyone in his administration. This president is sincere about what he said last night. He believes this is the right thing to do. I happen to disagree. So, that we don't somehow project to the outside world that there's disagreement in our government, in our country, about the future of Iraq, I think that if that is what our role is going to be, and yes, we can, Mr. Lugar, we can hold more hearings, oversight. I don't know what that's produced. We are going to have more oversight. Part of the problem that we have, I think, is because we didn't involve the Congress in this when we should have. And I'm to blame. Every senator who's been here the last 4 years has to take some responsibility for that. But I will not sit here in this Congress of the United States at this important time for our country and in the world and not have something to say about this, and maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe I have no political future. I don't care about that. But I don't ever want to look back and have the regret that I didn't have the courage, and I didn't do what I could to at least project something. This resolution, by the way, does not tie the hands of the President of the United States. It does not tie the hands of the President of the United States in any way. So I would go back to where I began and pick up on a point that Chairman Lugar mentioned. Coherence of strategy. I don't know how many United States senators believe we have a coherent strategy in Iraq. I don't think we've ever had a coherent strategy. In fact, I would even challenge the administration today to show us the plan that the President talked about the other night. There is no plan. I happen to know Pentagon planners were on their way to the CENTRALCOM over the weekend. They haven't even team B'd this plan. And my dear friend Dick Lugar talks about coherence of strategy. There is no strategy. This is a ping-pong game with American lives. These young men and women that we put in Anbar province, in Iraq, in Baghdad, are not beans. They're real lives. And we better be damn sure we know what we're doing, all of us, before we put 22,000 more Americans into that grinder. We better be as sure as you can be. And I want every one of you, every one of us, 100 senators, to look in that camera and you tell your people back home what you think. Don't hide anymore. None of us. That is the essence of our responsibility. And if we're not willing to do it, we're not worthy to be seated right here. We fail our country. If we don't debate this, we are not worthy of our country. We fail our country. I say again, and I will conclude with this, Mr. Chairman, I am grateful that we live in a country that allows us to bring before the American public differences of opinion in a civil way, an important way. Yes, it's passionate. Yes, it's emotional. People feel strongly on all sides. I respect that. But I would caution again, stop the impugning of people's motives. Stop the political stuff. All of us. All of us. This is much bigger than that. And if we're not adult enough to understand that, we will lose the confidence of the American public. That's what's happening right now. And I go back to where I started. No president can govern a nation. And certainly cannot conduct a policy, a war policy, without the support of the American public. That means the support of the Congress. We can't be divided. Does it get better if we don't talk about it? Is that what we're thinking here? Well, let's just don't talk about a resolution. Let's don't have a resolution. It'll get better. Well, all I would do is point to the last 4 years. Are things better in the Middle East today? No, they're more dangerous today in the Middle East than they've ever been. I challenge anyone to question that. We hear that from our panelists. Every day we have hearings. Whether it's Iran, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's Syria, whether it's Iraq, it is far more dangerous than we've ever seen. We have totally destroyed our standing and reputation and influence in the Middle East by what we're doing. And the more we sink down into this bog, the harder it is to get out of, the more enemies we make, just as Generals Abizaid and Casey said in November before the Senate Armed Services Committee. We don't need more American troops. I would quote General Shirelli, who was the 3-star in charge of Baghdad who just recently left. You know what he said a couple months ago? I don't need more American troops in Baghdad, I need more jobs. That's what he said. We're disconnecting the human dynamic, the human element. The people of Iraq are good people. That's not the issue here. But when people have no hope, when there's despair, little else matters. And this is not about terrorists don't like freedom. Tell that to the Palestinian people who have been chained down for many, many years. Terrorism is not a strategy, it's a tactic. Terrorism is not a plan. It's not a belief like democracy or monarchy. It's a tactic. It's a tactic. And so it's far more complicated than what I think a lot of us are led to believe. And if it's that complicated, then we need to get into it. This resolution is to hopefully bring something positive forward so that we can debate it, we can try to find some resolution. We can try to find some consensus on both sides of the aisle. We can try to give the President and the American people some confidence, especially the American people, that we do have a policy, that we do have some consensus, that we can come to some agreement. If we do not do this, it won't make any difference what Dick Lugar says or Joe Biden or John Warner or anybody else. It won't make any difference. This will unwind, as it already is, over the last 4 years to a point where it will make America's position in the world far more dangerous than it's ever been, and it will make the world dangerous. And when America loses the trust and confidence of the world, it makes the world more dangerous. America needs the world needs American leadership. And this is not about isolationism. This is not about pulling American troops out of the Middle East. None of that. This is about a smart way to project our military using the comprehensive framework of diplomacy as part of that. That's exactly what the Baker-Hamilton Commission was about. The 79 recommendations, and I would recommend that those of you who have not read those 79 recommendations should read them. These were from 10 very eminent Republicans and Democrats that came up with these recommendations. There's where we should go back to. There's where the bipartisan consensus is to go forward. Again, I say thank you for the opportunity to present the resolution on behalf of Chairman Biden, Chairman Levin, and Senator Snowe.
Way to go, Senator, and thank you for bringing this up. Especially thank you for bringing up the Bipartisan Commission on Iraq. Their report, which seems that the Bush administration keeps forgetting that they actually have a plan there. The Bush administration keeps saying if someone else has a better plan, he wants to hear about it. Well, how many people do you need to tell you, Mr. President? Many people have now been sounding in it and telling you exactly what they think we ought to be doing, but you are not hearing any of them. Instead, you are choosing to follow your own way. And now we're going to be sending 21,000 new and different troops into the region. And it just seems to me like this is ultimately doomed for failure. And if we don't do something about it, if we don't stand up as citizens, and if we don't urge our legislators to put a stop to this, where's it going to end? Where is it going to end? There are a few different resolutions right now being considered in the Senate, and Senator Landrieu has come out in favor of one of them, offered by Republican and former chairman of the Armed Services Committee, Senator Warner. You'll be interested to know that David Vitter, just the past few days, has come out in favor of the Bush administration's surge plan in Iraq. It seems to me that David Vitter has decided that Bush deserves, what is it now, 12th chance on trying to get the war right over there? Unbelievable that David Vitter is letting us down. I guess he's not too worried about it since, he doesn't have to run for re-election every 2 years anymore now that he's in the Senate. He still has 4 years to go before he's up for re-election. But I guarantee you, I'll be here to remind everyone that he's doing this. Dick Cheney claims enormous successes in Iraq. You know, this man is obviously not paying attention to the news. He's not paying attention to the intelligence reports. Either that or he is lying or just basically completely out of touch with reality. On CNN's Wolf Blitzer, he sits down and Wolf Blitzer talks with the vice president and goes toe-to-toe with him. Cheney's not having any criticism whatsoever, and it seems he's living in a completely different world. Here's a clip. Take a look for yourself.
Here's the problem that you have, the administration, credibility in Congress with the American public because of the mistakes, because of the previous statements, the last throws, the comment you made a year and a half ago, the insurgency was in its last throws. How do you build up that credibility? Because so many of these Democrats and a lot of Republicans now are saying they don't believe you anymore.
Well, Wolf, if the history books were written by people who are so eager to write off this effort to declare it a failure, including many of our friends on the media, the situation obviously would have been over a long time ago. The bottom line is that we've had enormous successes, and we will continue to have enormous successes. It is hard. It is difficult. It's one of the toughest things any president has to do. It's easy to stick your finger in the air and figure out which way the winds are blowing and then try to get in front of the herd. This president doesn't work that way. He also be very clear in terms of providing leadership going forward for what we need to do in Iraq. Now, fact is, this is a vitally important piece of business. It needs to be done. The consequences of our not completing the task are enormous. Just think for a minute. Think for a minute, Wolf, in terms of what policy is being suggested here. What you're recommending, or at least what you seem to believe the right course is to bail out.
I'm just asking questions.
No, you're not asking
questions. Yes, I am. I'm just asking
implicit in the critics. That your critics are implicit in what the critics are suggesting, I think, is an obligation to say, well, here's what we need to do. Or we're not going to do anything else, we're going to accept defeat. Defeat is not an answer. We can, in fact, prevail here, and we need to prevail, and the consequences of not doing so are enormous.
You've said that. Here's what Jim Webb, the senator from Virginia, said in his Democratic response last night.
The president took us into this war recklessly. We are now, as a nation, held hostage to the predictable and predicted disarray that has followed.
And it's not just Jim Webb. It's some of your good Republican friends in the Senate and the House are now seriously questioning your credibility because of the blunders, of the failures. Gordon Smith.
Wolf, I simply don't accept the premise of your question. I just think it's hogwash.
That what? There were no blunders? The president himself says there were.
Remember me.
Cheney denies that he has a problem with his credibility. Unbelievable. This is from a man who claimed the insurgents were in their last throes almost 2 years ago. Unbelievable. Cheney continues this interview asking about Cheney's daughter, Mary. Mary and her partner are pregnant, and Blitzer asked the vice president about his friends that are criticizing his daughter. Take a look.
We're out of time, but a couple issues I want to raise with you. Your daughter, Mary, she's pregnant. All of us are happy she's going to have a baby. You're going to have another grandchild. Some critics, though, are suggesting, for example, a statement from someone representing Focus on the Family. Mary Cheney's pregnancy raises the question of what's best for children. Just because it's possible to conceive a child outside of the relationship of a married mother and father doesn't mean it's best for the child. Do you want to respond to that?
No, I don't.
She's obviously a good daughter.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted. I'm about to have a 6th grandchild, Wolf, and obviously think the world of both my daughters and all of my grandchildren. And I think, frankly, you're out of line with that question.
I think all of us appreciate your daughter. No, we like your daughters. Believe me, I'm very, very sympathetic to Liz and to Mary. I like them both. That was just a question that's come up, and it's a responsible, fair question. Right?
I just fundamentally disagree with your question.
I want to congratulate you on having another grandchild. Let's wind up.
You know, I think that was a very fair question. You know, it's the vice president's own friends who are now attacking him. These are people who have raised millions of dollars for the vice president and the president in their multiple campaigns that they've run throughout the years. And these people are now attacking his own daughter. And the vice president says that that is an out-of-line question? Are you kidding me? It is unbelievable that this vice president is so completely distant from reality. And you know what? I can't even believe how he's treating his own daughter throughout this entire debacle. You know, especially since his daughter actually released a press release announcing their pregnancy. It's unbelievable to me that he would think that this is out of line. He is so far out of touch with what the American people are wanting in this country that it seems high time to me that we send a very loud message to the vice president. That's for sure. The president's credibility is up for question yet again. It's unbelievable to me that anyone can believe anything that comes out of that man's mouth. But Keith Olbermann takes a look at the president's credibility by analyzing former or previous State of the Union addresses. So many problems and lies with this administration. Should we trust him now with the new one? I don't know. Take a look.
On mountaintops and in caves, you will not escape the justice of this nation. The United States of America will not permit the world's most dangerous regimes to threaten us with the world's most destructive weapons.
And this site itself a lie of a kind. Ahmed Chalabi sold to us as an Iraqi freedom fighter when in fact the administration had put a suspected Iranian agent sitting right behind the First Lady of the United States. But it is the sales job before the war that we remember most vividly.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa. He attempted to purchase high-strength aluminum tubes suitable for nuclear weapons production. Several mobile biological weapons labs aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda.
At the time, only a handful of skeptics and the administration itself had guessed the truth. No uranium, no aluminum tubes, no mobile labs, no Al-Qaeda. Still, we were assured war with Iraq would not be fought on the cheap.
We will fight with the full force and might of the United States military.
In fact, the president sent in fewer than half of the troops recommended by the Army's Chief of Staff, General Eric Shinseki, and then he was ousted. Still, we were assured those troops would be taken care of.
I thank the Congress for providing our servicemen and women with the resources they have needed. Servicemen and women have survived terrible injuries, and this grateful nation will do everything we can to help them recover.
In fact, we went to war with the Army and the equipment we already had. And today, advocates for research on traumatic brain injury and other wounds suffered by troops with no body armor, unarmored vehicles, and no anti-RPG systems find themselves fighting funding cuts. At least, though, we were assured the troops would answer only to American commanders.
America will never seek a permission slip to defend the security of our country.
In fact, then as now, Mr. Bush let Iraqi leaders decide U.S. troops could not go after Muqtada al-Sadr, whose power has only grown in the interim. And even after the woeful inadequacy of his war plan became clear, the president assured us year after year that his course, the only course, was the right course and a winning course.
Iraqis are assuming more responsibility. Ordinary Iraqis are anxious to shoulder all the security burdens. America and its coalition partners will increasingly be in a supporting role. We remain on the offensive with a clear plan for victory. The insurgency will be marginalized. We're in this fight to win, and we are winning.
In that last speech, too, we find one claim which the events of just 2 weeks ago have now rendered painfully tragic.
We should be able to further decrease our troop levels. But those decisions will be made by our military commanders, not by politicians in Washington, D.C.
But there were no WMDs. The enemy in Iraq is primarily not al-Qaeda, and as the administration's own agencies report time and time again, al-Qaeda does not need a victory in the Iraq war. The Iraq war itself is a victory for them, draining resources from the real fight in Afghanistan and elsewhere, eroding global unity, creating a new generation of terrorists around the world, committed to the singular goal of decimating the State of the Union.
It is clear to me, and hopefully all of you, that the president has some severe credibility problems, and they must be addressed. So when you watch the State of the Union, I hope you take that in mind. A lot of great little sound bites, but no, there's not much there. The untold and forgotten story, Iran. In his State of the Union address, Bush gives several veiled threats on Iran, and reports are showing that we now have already begun picking the scab that is Iran. So the question must be, where's the evidence now on Iran? Olbermann takes a look at them. Here we go.
15 words in which Mr. Bush had claimed in 2003's address that Iraq had tried to secure weapon-grade uranium from Niger, ultimately proving to be false. Recent claims from the president that Iran is providing advanced weaponry and training to our enemies in Iraq, something he's expected to repeat tonight in the State of the Union, proving to be equally suspect. Then, as now, the problem is this. No matter what the intentions of Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad or Saddam Hussein before him, the Bush administration providing scant evidence to support the claims. The Los Angeles Times reporting that journalists traveling with U.S. troops in Iraq have failed to see these extensive signs of Iranian involvement. A recent sweep through a stronghold of Sunni insurgents uncovering only a single Iranian weapon, among dozens of arms caches. In addition, the newspaper reports U.S. officials declining to provide documentation of seized Iranian ordnance, despite repeated requests to do so. The military often releasing photographs of other weapons finds. Earlier today, in my extensive interview with Senator Hillary Clinton, the now presumptive presidential candidate, I asked her how she might approach the U.S.-Iranian relationship differently. Would you reach out immediately to the Syrians and the Iranians, even with the tensions between this country and Iran?
Absolutely. I don't see it as a sign of weakness. I see it as a sign of strength. You know, our president will not talk to people he considers bad. Well, there are a lot of bad actors in the world, and you don't make peace with your friends. You've got to deal with your enemies, your opponents, people whose interests diverge from yours. Right now, we're flying blind when it comes to Iran. We don't have good intelligence about Iran, about what their real motivations are, who's calling the shots. The same with Syria. And I would immediately open a diplomatic track. And I don't think we would lose. In fact, I think we would gain insight. I mean, if we have to take a firm stand against Iran to prevent it from obtaining nuclear weapons, let's get more information before we do that. Let's figure out, what levers of power in their society we might be able to pull and push.
The problem is nobody believes this administration. We're so far out of the mainstream that even if we were reporting actual fact-based evidence against Iran, the question is, who's going to believe us at this point in the game? Who's going to believe us? But the sad fact of the matter is that so far the administration hasn't been able to produce any fact-based evidence against Iran. It's unbelievable to me that we're already inspiring this. Senator Clinton shows clear leadership on this. Diplomacy. Wow. That's a refreshing topic, isn't it? This cowboy administration, cowboy diplomacy as he likes to call it, shoot from the hip. It's unbelievable, and there's no guessing or second guessing why we're actually in the mess that we're in right now when you actually look at how this administration has run things. My favorite quote from this interview is, "You don't have to make peace with your friends." Apparently this administration could take some hints from